Hey YouTube, it's me, BrandonColonel again. Next video that I have for you guys, let me scoot back just a little bit. Next video that I have for you guys is on the CRKT Swindle. Now, I've been putting this video up for about a year now. Basically, reason being is a little bit after I got it, then I was trying to take it apart to kind of lube it up a little bit and just generally figure out how it works, which is what I do with most of my knives to begin with. But there's very few knives that I haven't taken apart completely, and but yeah, so I was trying to do that with this one, but for whatever reason I couldn't even get the pivot out. So when I basically just gave up and tried to tighten it back down, it wouldn't tighten down. For the exact same reason that it wouldn't untighten, it wouldn't tighten. So then I was left with massive amounts of blade play in this knife, and I refuse to carry a knife with massive amounts of blade play. It's bad enough for me to even want to carry a knife with any blade play to begin with, let alone massive amounts of it. So yeah, I basically retired this knife until I got it fixed, which then I never actually got around to sending it into CRKT in order to actually do it. Well, recently, if you guys follow my Instagram, then you'll know that basically I just decided a couple of days ago to take another stab at this and just see what happens. And lo and behold, I'm carrying it again, because otherwise I wouldn't be reviewing it. Because if I'm reviewing a knife, I do want it to be either at top condition or basically as good as it's going to get, because I know that it's not a knife that I'd recommend. There's very few knives that I've reviewed on my channel that I just wouldn't recommend. There was a United Cutlery push dagger that I just wouldn't recommend that's on my channel, and I think I said as much there. But yeah, so this knife, I knew that I liked it, so I wanted it to be in good condition when I reviewed it again. Now, there are things that I don't like about this, namely parts to do with basically the assembly of it, like or more along the lines of disassembly and then reassembly. For one, if you are like me, a person who likes to take apart their knives, this is going to be a pain in the butt, because if you don't have decent mechanical knowledge of how things fit together, that spring that actually keeps this thing closed and just springs it back down, that thing's going to be a nightmare for you to try to figure out how to put it back together if you don't have a decent working knowledge of how to take things apart and put them back together. Now, it didn't take me all that long, but I do have a good head for how things go together. I mean, basically the moment that I took this thing apart, the spring basically exploded out inside, and I didn't even have a chance to see how it went together to begin with. So there's a lot of people who would just simply reverse engineer it. I had to figure it out. So there's that, but so just be aware of it. But the nightmare came into play when you're trying to set the internal stop pin back into place, so that way you can properly sandwich these two pieces of the frame and completely seat them the way that they're supposed to be. Because if you don't properly seat those, then I don't care how much you tighten this thing down, you are not properly getting it back together, and you will have massive amounts of blade play, unlike what I was even dealing with when I tried to take it apart the first time. So keep that in mind when you're taking it apart. But as far as the knife itself and just everything along the lines of how does the knife actually work, well, it's actually a really good knife. It's a really good all-around EDC. The pocket clip is definitely designed for a back pocket carry. For whatever reason, my computer over there just decided to make a random sound. Don't know where that came from. But yeah, so this is definitely designed for a back pocket carry. It really doesn't matter if it's in your left or your right pocket, as far as in your front pockets. It's basically the knife is going to be seated backwards, so that way when you try to pull it out, it's going to be on that side. The flipper is going to be on that side. So then you have to flip it around in order to actually access the blade. And similar to a Quaken design, none of the blade actually comes out. The entire blade is hidden completely. And so, yeah, this is designed to be a back pocket carry. Because let me show you what that looks like real quick. I've got the box beneath my feet. There we go. So let me show you what this looks like real quick. Let me take that out. When you put the knife in, then after you take it out, your finger is on that button. Whereas, here, let me angle this down just a bit. Whereas if you have it over here, then sure, it fits there and everything. But then when you take it out, well, for one, it actually kind of catches a little bit. But when you take it out, then you've got to flip it around. And while that might not be all that big of an issue to some, it would definitely be an issue to others. Others primarily being me, because I know that I would be massively annoyed by having to do that every single time. But it is what it is. But yeah, so that would definitely get annoying. I wouldn't personally want to deal with it. But yeah, so primarily this is actually not just a back pocket knife, but it's also usually going to be a dress knife. Like just your dressier style blade. It's just a long, sleek, elegant carry. And it's not really designed for all that heavy of use. I know that, for one, I haven't really used it in all that heavy of anything, really. And I do have a nick right there. I really haven't used this for much of anything. In fact, it's actually been sitting in a drawer for about at least a good 8 months, because if anything, I only had about maybe 4 months worth of carry on that thing, if even that much. And this has been sharpened since then. So, yeah, all in all, this thing has seen use, yes. And it has seen a decent amount of use, but it's also been sitting in a drawer for about 4 months, or for about 8 months. So, and it's been, like I said, it's been sharpened since then. So yeah, I can clearly say that it does chip out a little bit easier than some. Because the most that I've actually cut with it recently is a couple bits of cardboard, a bit of paper. Probably the only thing that this would have chipped out on is the one minuscule little zip tie that I cut. But even for an 8CR steel, because this is 8CR 13 MOV, but even for an 8CR steel, that's a little brittle for me. But yeah, so I'm not exactly carrying this thing all the time. Particularly, I probably wouldn't be carrying this thing to work with me all that much, due to the simple fact that sometimes I do have to cut zip ties. Now, it's not all that many that I do, but sometimes I do. So keep that in mind. And it's not a massive nick. It's not exactly like a complete detriment to the blade. Still getting the hiccups. But yeah, so just as you can see, if your eyes are quick enough, then you can see where it does have a slight hiccup in there. But as you can see, it's not truly impeding the cutting performance, which this thing is incredibly sharp. It is an absolute razor blade. Now, it doesn't really have all that much heft behind it to do just simply the dropping performance through. I do have to kind of slice. But if it was heavier, it would definitely just drop through the paper. But yeah, so this thing, just razor sharp. That one little nick in there is really the only thing impeding any kind of cutting performance. As far as the detent on this, it has a really, really nice detent. I love how strong it is. The one thing that I don't like, as far as the detent goes, is that while it's hard, and I love a nice, hard, snappy detent, this is probably one of the hardest detents that I have in my collection. The one thing that I don't like is how small that flipper tab is. So now you're forcing your finger onto a very comically small flipper tab with a massive detent. And so, sure, you get a wicked, stupid fast blade, but at the same time, you're not going to be flipping this thing all day, because a lot of people I know are like me, and they're going to be flipping their knives all day for entertainment. That if they're bored, they're just going to pull out their knife and flick it out. I've actually got a friend who just does that on a regular basis if he's bored. He could actually be in public and he'll be sitting there flicking his knife in and out. This is going to be a knife that you don't really do that with all that much because the flipper tab is so small. You'd have to develop all kinds of calluses specifically for that in order for it to work. Because otherwise your finger is going to hurt after a little bit. I mean, seeing as how many flippers I do have, then yes, I have built up enough of a callus. Either that or I've just simply deadened the feeling in my pointer finger enough to the point where I can flip it for a little bit. But even so, eventually my finger starts to hurt and I just don't want to flip it anymore. It does have a really, really nice feel to it. The bearing system is one of the smoothest I've felt in a very long time. And this knife is only like $40, so it's not exactly your incredibly super high-end knife. I mean, like I said, it's just got a stainless steel frame, HCR13 steel, but the bearing system is perfect. It is incredibly smooth. There's really only one knife in my collection, well, two knives technically, that I have that truly rivals this in smoothness, as far as the bearing systems go. And that is, one of which is actually kind of making up my stand right now, or at least the case of it is, and it's inside the stand, which is my Jason Brow Strife. The other one is my Custom Knife Factory Sequoia. This is probably the smoothest bearing system that I own. Without a doubt, this is the smoothest bearing system. Almost every time I almost cut my finger on it. Which in the video that I actually did of this knife, then I actually said that that when I tighten up the lock bar tension on this thing, it wasn't nearly as smooth as it used to be. And that actually held for quite some time, which I will basically give a small shout out to one thing that I have recently bought. Let me actually get it real quick. There we go. Most of you guys probably already know what this is, but Tough Glide. Basically, this is magic. Magic in a bottle. Last Bladeshow I went to, I actually got a tube of nano oil, and while it was really good, it wasn't exactly anything to write home about. It was a decent lubricant. It worked well, but that was about it. This stuff, oh my gosh. One single application, and it turned this thing from being smooth, but at the same time tight enough that when I drop it, it just stops right where it's at, and then it doesn't really want to go any farther. Or even if I completely release it, it'll stop right about here, and then I could just shake down the rest of it. One single application, and now I'm actually scared again. Because let me situate my thumb in a way that it will fall on my thumbnail. You disengage lock, and that's what happens now. That is back to what it used to be, which now I've actually got a nick in my nail again. I actually got my skin a little bit too. Okay. But yeah, that's one application. Another knife that I was having just a little bit of trouble with was this knife. I've brought it up in multiple videos prior to this one. And this knife, I was actually saying that I was putting off the review because I wanted it to break in just a little bit more. One application of Tough Glide. This thing is amazing. it is now incredibly smooth, and I was actually considering reviewing it today until I realized, oh wait, I still have to get to this one. Now, when I put the Tough Glide on this, it actually didn't really do that much. Reason being, this is about as smooth as it gets, and it was like that naturally. So yeah, I'm a fan of this thing. I really do enjoy it. Now, like I said, seeing as the Tough Glide didn't really do anything to it, I still put some Tough Glide on it just to ensure that it's properly lubricated, but it really didn't do anything. The most that the lubricant's probably going to do is just ensure that it doesn't rust on me, because it is a stainless steel caged bearing system. Now, it does say IKBS on it, and most people, when they think IKBS, like me, you're going to think along the lines of the CRKT Ripple. With the Ripple, this is the first iteration of IKBS, where you actually have free-floating bearings. You've probably got like about 80 or so free-floating bearings on the inside of that thing. This is still IKBS, but it's a caged version of it. And when I took it apart, it was almost the exact same looking thing as as on my Browse Blade Strife. It pretty much looked the exact same, which is probably why they're so smooth. I don't know. But yeah, they look like fairly similar things. I know that Jason, if I'm not mistaken, he actually makes his in-house. I could be wrong about that, but it does say like his proprietary bearing system, so if I'm not mistaken, he makes his bearings in-house. But yeah, this is a caged variant of IKBS. So that's actually really good to know if you do decide to take it apart and go through all the hassle of trying to seat this thing back together. So if you try to do that, then you don't have to worry about anything. The one problem that I have been having with this, though, just let me get a screwdriver real quick, is that after a couple of flicks or so, it does have a problem of coming loose on me. That was a problem that I was having even before I tried to take it apart the first time. So yeah, that is a bit of a problem. So keep that in mind when you buy it. I don't know how many of them it'll actually be on, but yeah, it was definitely a problem for me to begin with. And seeing as I don't feel like trying to take it apart again in order to fix it, then in order to do my usual trick of the Teflon tape and so on and so forth, then yeah, I'm just going to deal with it, which now I've finally got it back. But yeah, it's still every bit as smooth. Because apparently, I think I might have actually even started the video off with it loose. But yeah, as you can still see, it's a rocket. It polishes up really nicely, and I do like that a lot. It took an insane level of polish pretty much about as instantly as I put it on. So I don't know how well that's coming up, but yeah, I've got a mirror polish on here. There we go, that's showing up a little bit better. The satin finish is pretty much perfect. I know that when I was actually talking about the Spyderco satin, I was saying how I didn't really care for this, and I thought that it could be a little bit higher grit, and to kind of clean it up just a little bit. Basically, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I do like. It's a little reflective, not too much, but it is just a little bit reflective. It looks clean all the way from one side to the other. Doesn't look like one side got any more aggressive than the other. The lines go straight from top to bottom, so that way it doesn't look like it started up here, had something else in the middle, and then picked up again in the bottom. Which, that's what I've seen on a couple of Spydercos. It looks like it started on one end, something funky happened in the middle, and then it restarted again at the bottom. And I'm over here just like, do you know how to grind a knife? And or at least like I was saying, just doing it properly. What did I even drop? Oh, and apparently I dropped the screwdriver. But yeah, so this is a really good satin, and I absolutely love it. And the finish actually holds up fairly well. The only reason why I have any kind of scratches on the finish for the handle, because if I'm not mistaken, this is a tie-dye coated handle. The only reason why I do have any scratches on it is because when I was putting it back together, basically the only way that I could was to basically put a vice grip on it with my pliers. So the scratches on it are basically coming from that, where I had to vice pinch it right here. And then it's actually surprising that little scratch right there, basically the shiny parts, is the only thing you're seeing at the top, because that's actually the primary place where I was gripping it at. And I was actually putting more pressure right there than I was down here. So that's actually quite surprising. So yeah, the coating holds up incredibly well. If me putting it in a vice grip with a pair of jagged edge pliers is the only thing that could do anything to it. So yeah, as far as how it carries in various types of pants, in jeans it does work a little bit better if the jeans are thinner, because in thicker jeans it tends to try and ride a little sideways in your pants. So just like say that this is your pocket, I'll just put it like that. If your jeans are thicker, it'll kind of just ride like that. And so it's going to get a little uncomfortable when you sit down, and then eventually it's going to start making the clip basically just wobble a little bit, because we're just wobbling a little bit right now, but I do also have the clip a little bit on the loose side. You can actually tighten or loosen the clip and make it wobble a little bit more, but at the same time have more tension. Or you can tighten it up and make it have looser tension, but at the same time, if you tighten it down a little bit too much, then when you pick it up, it'll basically stay there. So keep that in mind when you're playing around with the tension. Making it looser will tighten it, but tightening it down will also not only make the tension go away, but you could run the risk of just completely having it open and possibly even just losing your knife if you do that. But yeah, so that's something that you can work around with to your liking. I actually forgot the entire tangent that I was going on with that. Oh, yeah. But so this thing was primarily made for dress pants. So that way you could put it at the end of your pocket, and then it'll be able to just sit flat against your back pocket. I'm just dropping things all over the place. Great. Scratch carbon fiber. That's awesome. But yeah. Well, not exactly looking to get rid of this thing anytime soon. I could probably polish it out a little bit. But yeah. So now I got scratch carbon fiber. Yay, this knife is broken in. Let me put it in my back pocket before I drop it again. But yeah, so overall, this thing has a really great edge. It's very utilitarian. Unless you have smaller fingers, I wouldn't really recommend using the finger choil, because that back of the edge is not really blocked off all that much. At least not initially. If I'm not mistaken, I was actually the one that blocked off that edge, so that way I could use it a little bit more. But otherwise, initially it's not actually blocked off. And so you're fairly likely to cut yourself on that if you don't have very small fingers. Comfort in hand, it's not the best, but it's also not the worst that I've handled either. It almost seems like it was designed in reverse. This is a lot more comfortable, but the best that you could do with this is pulling cuts. But yeah, so it does seem a little bit backwards in the design, but it is what it is. It's meant to be a sleek gentleman's carry, and and honestly, it accomplishes exactly what it set out to do. So this is a really nice knife. I recommend it for pretty much everybody if you're going for light to medium cutting. Or light to medium light, I guess. But yeah, if you're just out for a sleek gentleman carry folder that has a really great flipping action, particularly doesn't break the bank, look no further than this. Last thing, the jimping is actually really good. And let's see. Any last minute words? I'll just end on this right here. This will be the last thing I say. Lockup is actually really good. It's pretty much fully engaged as far as the lock face on the tang of the knife, but it has plenty of life before it walks all the way over into the other frame. So this thing has a lot of life in it. The lock geometry allows for the wear over time, but I really don't see this moving, seeing as it's steel-on-steel contact. So that's all that I really have to say. And as always, YouTube, stay safe.